Okay, we are live again. Apologies for earlier. There were some internet difficulties on my end at the end there. But I think this time I'm going to try something a little bit different that I have wanted to try for a while now, but kept forgetting to actually do. We are gonna do just a pure, just chatting kind of stream. No games, nothing like that to worry about tonight. Just gonna vibe and hang out and chat and see how that goes, I guess. Interesting that the stream chat from earlier is even still visible. So yeah, you can see exactly what went wrong there earlier that caused the stream earlier to have to end. So how is everyone tonight? I also do have the web page open for Twitch, so that I can actually read the chat this time until I figure out how to put it back up on OBS. Good, feeling intense about my fan fictions. That's interesting. Maybe you should share some in the Cove later if you're feeling ready to do so. I am feeling intense about many things today, and not all in a good way. So hopefully this is just sort of a way to kind of calm myself down and just kind of vibe with everyone for a bit. I hope it works anyway. My throat hurts. I need to get some water. So what kind of things you writing fanfic about, if I may ask? Things that are NSFW while writing about the dad characters in Pokemon. Peony from the Crown Tundra DLC is what I'm most interested in. Yeah, Peony's cool. He's definitely got that energy. But yeah, I guess if it's NSFW, then probably don't share it on the Cove. Let's keep it safe for work there. It helps that he's written into the game as an obviously good dad character. Yeah, very true. There is a solid basis to work with there already. That's definitely helpful. So, what else is there to talk about? The fan game, maybe. So the thing with the Pokemon fan game, I've recently started undergoing a process to try and transplant the whole thing into being more of an original separate thing that is like disconnected from Pokemon for the sake of A, more creative freedom, and B, avoiding Nintendo's lawyers. I think you all know how that be. But yeah, that's kind of been an interesting process to try and translate a lot of what I like about Pokemon without just like directly copying it too much. The title screens are not going to have the logo, probably. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Another thing is, I think the hardest part of it for me is going to be trying to come up with my own kind of like creature monster designs that I am satisfied with, that I feel are able to stand alongside the official designs, which is something that I've noticed a lot of fan games seem to struggle with, is the Fakemon designs. They tend to be kind of, in a lot of packs, they tend to be just kind of undercooked feeling, I guess, if that's a good word for it, maybe, where it feels like they kind of just slapped something together at random and just threw it in. Whereas the official designs, there's like multiple interviews and records on the process of designing like the official Pokemon, and they actually they spend like, I think it was once said that they redesign the average Pokemon about 6 times before they're satisfied with like the concept and the execution of the idea of the design. I think the Palmy evolution line was very undercooked. The Palmy line that was a whole thing. I did not like how that was handled either. Like, for the first Pikachu clone to actually evolve since like the original Pikachu line, it is very telling that nobody really cared about that novelty because the evolution just felt kind of pointless. It very easily could have just been one single stage without really losing anything. Oh yeah, 100%. I was also very convinced that Pomo in the leaks had to be fake. The idea I had for my hack was to have an alternate evolution that takes cues from Spanish EMTs who have like the striped black and yellow kind of jacket going on, and sort of work that into the design. I was gonna call it Pawametic. I think that was a cute name for it. Have it just be like 2 stages at like level 24. Yeah, that even would be acceptable. Just there was no reason it had to be a 3-stage line for sure though. that does bring me back to the other thing about trying to come up with my own designs, though, is a big chunk of the Fakemon I had were, like, evolutions or variants or new forms or just plain kind of redos of existing Pokemon. So that does sort of put me in a weird place where, like, I certainly do also have plenty of original ideas, like fully original concepts to work with still, but it definitely puts a shift in things where, like, the I had like a whole 150 plus thing going on when you included like the variants and the evolutions and all that stuff, which I was really proud of being able to match that, like, almost by myself with, like, just a handful of exceptions where someone else suggested an idea. And now I kind of have to push myself even further and say, okay, but what happens if I disconnect this design from the existing Pokemon entirely? Where does that leave it? How do I rework it to be its own thing and still, like, kind of fit the new vibe of, like, the direction it's going? It's gonna be a whole process, honestly. Another thing that I definitely have had an interesting road trying to sort of adapt into its own thing is the setting, because Pokemon as a setting does lean a decent bit into being futuristic and having a slight bit of sci-fi going on. It's not too far into the future, but they're clearly more advanced than, like, our current real world. But at the same time, the Pokemon themselves are this very fantastical thing. So there's kind of an interesting contrast there when I think about it. And I figured out a good way to sort of do a similar thing, but not entirely kind of copy it. Is to have it kind of be the reverse, where it's mostly a fantasy world, but through the combination of the magic system, the limited technology available, and the creatures themselves basically going full Flintstones tech. I think those things together, I could create a sort of weird amalgam of, like, basically sci-fi under the core of it, but also having, like, a skin of magic and, like, fantasy over the top of it, while also sort of having those elements as well as just a regular part of it, of course. But the way those elements kind of would interplay in this world is sort of interesting to see how the ideas are sort of taking shape and the world building as a result of that. I haven't updated Fakemon ideas in a while, but I want to start coming up with gym leader concepts next, I think. That is a good idea. I think for the gym leaders, I think I only had, how many of them did I have planned out? The first one that comes to mind was the normal type gym leader who was going to he was going to be like a very very eccentric kind of guy, like a really tacky mismatched fashion sense, kind of absent minded, kind of out of touch, but like the name the but it kind of, with the joke kind of being that like you'd expect this really generic kind of guy for a normal leader. Think like Larry, who's literally just like an overworked office worker, but this guy would basically go the exact opposite direction and just be like the wackiest, funniest dude possible, to sort of subvert those expectations of like the normal type. I think the icing on the cake for it would be his name. I was thinking of calling him Abe. Abe Normal, like abnormal, kind of to play on the irony there, the like the subversion and all that. The next Legends game, I think, should do away with Pokeballs almost completely. Maybe when you knock out a Pokemon, you get the option of joining your party or not. The game set in the past. Want to see more mechanics to make them less futuristic. I'm still not sure if we're even getting another Legends game. I feel like it was kind of a one-off experiment. At least that's. I know everyone has their theories now about like Legends Unova or Legends Celebi, because Johto fans all of a sudden are like speaking up really loud. I mean, I like the Johto games, but I don't know why there seems to be like a specific resurgence of interest in Johto so strongly all of a sudden. It's kind of interesting how that happened. I mean, again, like I like the Johto games. They're definitely pretty cool. I mean, even despite their flaws, they are definitely games that I would consider up there. And Crystal being one of the first games I played, there's probably some bias there. But again, it's just, why now of all times when there's like not really anything Johto related going on, as far as I can tell. Like there was no other Johto related thing announced at any point for a while now. Maybe that's just the only reason, is that it has been so long since Johto has been acknowledged. I don't know. Want to see a Fakemon story where Larry is a multi-dimensional, two-faced character. One face is what he puts on for his boss, professionalism. Then when he gets home, he lets out his rage from the stress of work, and maybe he's a dark gym leader. That could be pretty funny. Like, just make it just like Gretzko. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Make it like that show, but it's just Larry having secret nightlife as like a dark gym leader. That could definitely be an amusing concept. Could be fun to play around with that. Still haven't played Legends Arceus past the tutorials. Eh, it's definitely a game. I mean, they did. I do like a lot of what they did, and I respect that they tried something new, even if, in my opinion, the execution was not ideal at points. It definitely could have been a lot better, and it definitely, in a lot of ways, felt kind of bare bones, like it was just the skeleton for Scarlet and Violet to be built on, aside from the obvious mechanics like the battle system and stuff that didn't carry over. But aside from that, it definitely feels like it was sort of a test run more than a thing on its own 2 feet, I guess. Honestly, I kind of feel like Gen 8 as a whole kind of walked so that Gen 9 could run. Like, you see a lot of the ideas in Scarlet and Violet, a lot of them were kind of slowly kind of played around with and experimented with throughout, like Let's Go, Sword and Shield, and of course Legends Arceus. There was a lot of things carried over from those games eventually to Scarlet and Violet. Not the biggest fan of the whole player dodging, real-time precision kind of stuff. One more middle ground. I think the turn-based style works better for me. Oh yeah, honestly, agreed. Like, I think that the stigma against turn-based games, I think it's a symptom of, honestly, at this point, yeah, I think it's a symptom of sort of a wider problem where people are so obsessed with like the idea of action in games that they take this almost kind of scary, almost intellectual stance towards it, where any like amount of strategy in a game is just seen as unnecessary nerd shit or whatever. And I personally, I like games where I actually have to use my head and not just button mash as fast as humanly possible. The removal of routes and introduction of the provinces and area system was super smart. I do kind of like the way they did it, like dividing it up into chunks. That's actually, now that I think of it, I think there was a YouTube video a while ago. I think it was by Jello Apocalypse that basically said, here's how they would do an open world game, an open world Pokemon, and that's basically what it was to like split it up into a few big chunks. The one issue I did have with the system in Scarlet Violet with how it worked was when it's kind of confusing to navigate when like the areas still don't have distinct like names. Like when it was like a more linear defined thing, it was okay to just have like Route 1, Route 2, Route 3, etc. Because like you obviously know when you're on Route 1 versus Route 2 and when that goes into Route 3. It's all very cleanly defined. But with Scarlet and Violet, you can just like hop up and down a couple hills, and you've gone through like 3 different provinces somehow, and it's very confusing how exactly some of the areas were like designated and split up. It's kind of confusing at times. Confusing. At times. game concept I started after speaking of names for the areas, but not in a linear order like nomic system. Yeah, I do think that is like the right direction to go, is to give everything like its own unique name for the area now, instead of just like a numbering system, like the lake at the north of the map being, again, I hope I pronounce this right, Casaroya, or the mountain that was like Glacado. God, I really need to work on my Spanish. That is a whole other thing that I need to get working on, honestly. Like, if they could just do that and have everything have like its own distinct name, I think that would definitely be less confusing. Like, they don't even need to get super crazy with it. Just have it be like X mountain, Y plain, Z steppe, badlands, whatever. Frickin' Magikarp River, Geodude Cave, I don't know. In Spanish, it's se, not si, so it's Glacedo. Does that sound right? Glacet Auto? That doesn't seem to flow right. Hold on. Glacet Auto? Yeah, it's really hard to say that in one go. Weird. Glacet Auto? See, that still feels weird on my tongue for some reason. Like, it doesn't like roll one into the next. That's confusing. Anyway. Also, the level scaling, yeah, that was another thing where, on one hand, I feel like I think I kind of enjoyed that, like, there was an additional layer of challenge from trying to out of order the game, where, like, some places being higher leveled or lower leveled would create an almost kind of dynamic curve, I guess, where you never really know what you're going to be up against next. Though, I mean, of course, if they did go like full crystal clear style with it, I think there could also be. I could also see that probably being a bit more fair, I guess. Because, like, the lack of level scaling, it works for, like, some parts of the game, but the gap is just too big. Where like no one is gonna be doing like the grass gym as like their last gym. Like there's only really like maybe the middle few gyms where you can really out of order it too much. Which I guess is how some of the older games would do it, where like in the Kanto games you could do like the middle few gyms in different orders, and in Johto infamously as well you had the branching path where you could do three of them out of order. In Hoenn, I think the only skip was that you could skip Dewford Town, which is very early in the game, and it doesn't really work too well in that regard. If you save it for too long, then it does just become kind of brainless. Plus, it's definitely not quite the same as having like a several different gyms where you can kind of go whatever order between them. Sinnoh as well was kind of strange about this, where in the original Diamond and Pearl, I think you could do Pastoria before Veilstone. I don't think there was a way to get to Hearthome early, though. And then Platinum went and actually moved Hearthome earlier in the game and removed the ability to do Pastoria and Veilstone in like an order of choice. That was definitely kind of an interesting thing going on there. Honestly, like the more that this sort of becomes its own original thing, the more I also kind of want to try just like a more down to earth, like just take like a Pokemon game and just kind of do like a more limited kind of down to earth kind of hack of it, instead of like the big ambitious thing that it kind of turned into. Like, I definitely think that like a platinum hack, I could definitely do a lot with a platinum hack to really bring out the best of Sinnoh and help people appreciate it the way I do, while also minimizing some of the flaws. Hometown might be a choice between like three or four of the areas. Do one be able to hard coding that would be just a few makes sense versus always starting in the same place. The way Crystal Clear handled this was that every single town and city would have like a sort of apartment for rent, I guess, as like one of the buildings. And like then the way like your starting place would be chosen was that you would end up in one of those in like all the other cities and towns that didn't already have like an obvious player house. Maybe something similar to that, where like each city and town in the game has like a designated starting area built into the map, even if the player doesn't use most of them for obvious reasons. think I still want to do a home, and it would be super cool to have themed player houses that blend into the towns they're in. Oh yeah, that actually does sound pretty cool, honestly. Have each one have its own sort of style to fit like the architecture and like the weather and all that kind of stuff in like the area. That would be a lot more work, but that would be pretty cool if you did want to go for that. I think that's definitely could be an interesting way to go. Maybe the ones you don't pick would be occupied by trainers that you encounter at some point, either on their own adventure or just by visiting their house and battling them post game. Maybe yeah, that works. That would work great. I think that could be a very interesting way to just throw in like some little super bosses, some optional bosses, where the player could battle these other sort of non-player player characters, I guess. maybe maybe you do what Univa did and just have like Cynthia randomly in one of them to just terrify the players that just walk into it without expecting it. Considering these are all development, it could just be two choices of where to start and place them far apart. Yeah, that's a good starting point too. It's a good realistic place to start. And you can always add on more later if you're able to. Also, the thing about the wild scaling above, I missed that response earlier. I think the way I would do that is to have the wild levels also map to like your Pokemon's levels. Is that I think because like then like the wild Pokemon are obviously always suited to your level, just like the trainers would be. I think the way I had planned to try and handle it was wild mons are the same level as like your maybe your lowest level mon. So then there's still some incentive to actually have to train them. Like they're not instantly on par with like the ace of your team. But then like regular trainers would be up to par with like the highest level of your team maybe, or like their highest level would map to your highest level, and then the rest would go backwards from there, perhaps. Gym leaders could be like, I don't know, maybe. Well, actually, with gym leaders though, I think since they're such like a core part of like the progression of being like these kind of checkpoints, these gates of sorts you have to get through. I think gym leaders actually should follow more of like specific tiers, where like maybe it like rounds up to like the nearest, I don't know, fifth level or something. So that like the gym leader is always like above you by like a few levels at most. And maybe with some planning, you could make the fight slightly easier. But then if you grind too much, you run the risk of looping back around to, like, the next tier up. Because that was my thoughts on a solution to one issue I had while playing Crystal Clear was that since I was doing a lot of the gyms back to back without a lot of the exploring, although to be fair, without like the actual story, there was just kind of a lot less levels to go around to begin with, but that's kind of a different issue that just compounds this. Like, the way I was playing and just kind of bouncing between every gym as fast as I could, it resulted in my Pokemon's levels not growing very fast, which resulted in the gym levels also staying pretty low for a while. So then once I got to, like, the Elite Four and stuff like that, I just kind of smacked into a brick wall where I was, like, way, way underleveled, and there was, like, nothing left I could really do to reasonably train up through that gap. So that's why I think that, like, major stuff like gyms or, say, Evil Team leader battles, that kind of, like, major story gate stuff should follow, like, a set kind of benchmark rather than going directly off, like, mirroring the player. And, like, if it rounds up, then, like, I mean, you're still getting a lot of experience when you do manage to beat it. So then, like, if you go, like, you won't go through all the gyms and only be, like, level 30 or whatever weird thing I was at. Like, you would still get enough experience that way, even if all you did was battle the gyms, that, like, you should still be reasonably able to keep up, I think. That's just kind of my thoughts. Obviously, in practice, coding this, probably more difficult. Like, early game hard cap of level 20, so the highest the gym leader could be is about 23. Using a multiplier of the leader's weakest Pokemon. Interesting. Another thing on my thoughts was, I think that I would want to start the game from a lower level and just, like, skip a lot of that, like, early game tedium, you know? Like, nobody really likes just having to spam tackle or scratch or whatever. I think ideally the game would start at, like, maybe level 10-ish rather than level 5. Then you've hopefully got, like, a full set of 4 moves on all the Pokemon by then, at least. Even if those moves are obviously kind of bad and going to be outclassed quickly, you still have some actual variety going on to some degree. Takes max 30 minutes to get first gem. That's kind of funny because, like, it's kind of funny how that's can't talk about it. What I mean is, it's kind of funny how that's kind of the opposite of the philosophy I was going for, where, again, like, the gyms feel like they should be, like, these big, like, checkpoints on the journey. So I want even the first gym to require like at least a little bit of like exploring and whatnot to prepare. Obviously not like super duper hard, but like definitely have like a little bit of like a first little hill to climb. So there would definitely have to be like a lot of like areas accessible before that to properly prepare for that to work though, for my idea. So I guess it's kind of interesting how the philosophies and stuff there differ. I guess it kind of depends on what like the overall goal kind of is. The non-Finmore kind of range champion should be in the level 80s at least, if not 90s or all 100s. That's another thing is that like I think the way I had it going was that like it starts at like level 10. The first gym would be maybe I don't know like maybe it would be like to kind of break the other rule about the rounding up to like fives or whatever. Maybe the first gym would be like 10 levels rounded up. So then, like, let's say it's level 20, I guess. Then, like, each other gym would go up through 5, so you'd have, like, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, like, 50 and 55, I think, for the final gym, if I did that right. And then the thing was that, like, then the story would, like, really have kicked deep into gear at that point. Like, after you beat, like, the final gym, then that's when, like, the villain and legendary kind of plot would actually kind of start to kick into gear, instead of it being kind of awkwardly placed after, like, the 7th badge, which always did feel kind of weird to me. Like, you gotta complete the gyms first, and then your character is, like, considered actually able to do something against the criminals that are, like, running amok or whatever. And it like breaks up the flow less. It just feels like that flows better to me. Or like you beat the 8 gyms, then you have like the bulk of the story stuff, and then once like the actual story is resolved, then you go on to like the Elite Four and the Champion as like your final victory lap. Welcome, Sean. Also, welcome, Ekton. Sorry I forgot to acknowledge you earlier when I encountered Cynthia, Trude, PhD over Milotic. Maybe it's because I tend to choose Piplup, and thus I'm coming into that fight with an Empoleon a lot of times. But I always found Milotic just kind of annoying. Like, it was very tanky and hard to knock out more than anything when I was a kid. But I couldn't really do too much to my team either. Garchomp was definitely the one to watch out for. Garchomp doesn't need to survive your attacks because, like, back then, it was, like, the fastest, hardest hitting thing around. It still is, like, pretty good, all things considered. Definitely not as overwhelming as it once was, but still decently strong, even by today's standards. And then another thing with like level scaling and stuff is that not only would you have like the bulk of the story stuff, and like the gym scaling and just starting from a higher level, that itself would put you at like maybe like 60, 70-ish by the time you get to the league. And then from there, you would basically have like the Elite Four would be like 70s, maybe mid late 70s, early 80s, I don't know. And then the champion, that final jump would be like a big jump to like in like the mid 90s or something. Definitely trying to like recreate that experience with like Cynthia at the Sinnoh League, because like one thing I feel like often gets overlooked when talking about the difficulty around her is that it is one of the few times where the official games do the whole do like a very deliberately big level spike, and it's since it's like already the end of the main game, basically, it actually does kind of work there. Like when you go from the first Elite Four to Cynthia, there is like a 20 level gap between them. Your team will not be leveled anywhere near Cynthia's going into that fight, immediately putting you at a disadvantage, even like regardless of whatever team you bring. She just has like brute force on her side. English is renowned name because I don't remember all the meaning of it is. My family was modified the spelling. Oh yeah, the region name. That was another thing. Is that mine was Pathma, which, from what I can tell, is a Greek word that has a variety of potential meanings, but almost all of them fit the story and the game in some way. So I just found it so fitting in that regard that it was basically like just a multi level pun. Potential readings of Pathema, I think, were passion, misfortune, sin, reversal. It's quite a loaded word. It's quite a lot of potential meanings going on, and it also just sounds honestly really nice and beautiful in like a region name. As for why I was looking at Greek specifically, is because Kalos was also a Greek word, so. Speaking of Gen 4, when I was a kid, I used to have such a hard time with Lucian. I thought he was the final boss. And I finally beat him, only to find out I still had to deal with Cynthia. Oh yeah, Lucian is... I don't know why I pronounced that two different ways there. Lucian, I think that's the right pronunciation now that I think of it. Lucian is definitely very challenging in his own right. Very fitting of it being the penultimate challenge before Cynthia. Like Alakazam hits very hard, very fast, pretty similar to Garchomp in that regard. that it is like it was like the peak of a glass cannon at that time. And of course, he's also got, on the defensive side though, he's got Bronzong, which was not weak to very much back then, because like that was before the Steel type nerf, where they still resisted Ghost and Dark back then. So the Steel and Psychic type was very strong, because they basically canceled out most of each other's weaknesses, on top of Steel's already massive list of resistances at the time. And Bronzong, while it definitely lacked the attacking power of Pokemon like Alakazam or Garchomp or fellow Psychic Steel Metagross, Bronzong had its abilities. It could have Levitate, or it could have Heatproof, so that nullified another weakness, and you wouldn't know which one until you actually tried to hit it super effective. Bronzong was definitely a very interesting Pokemon at the time. Pretty neat how they designed it as a tank at that time. The one thing I have with it though, even though it's literally a bell, it does not learn Heal Bell, oddly enough. That is something I found out one day while planning to use a Bronzong for something, was the literal Bell Pokemon does not learn Heal Bell. Add that to the list of weird moves that Pokemon should or shouldn't learn that they can or can't anyway. Oh, I'm having fun with modifying spellings of words in other languages to come up with a cool area city name. I think the way I would do area city names is either to like name them after like a Pokemon, or I don't know, maybe a move in some cases if it fits, like I don't know, Rock Slide Mountain or something, or just to do like the Gen 3, Gen 4 kind of route of just like mash two short words together into like a big name. Or you could always do the Gen 2 way of like flowers and trees and plants, which is symbolism that the series as a whole really likes to fall back on now that I think of it. It really loves its plant theme naming, even above like the other theme names. Like Gyarados being able to learn Flamethrower, that one actually kind of makes sense to me. Like, yeah, it's a water type, but it's also like well, I don't want to call it a dragon because it's not dragon type, but you know what I mean. Like, it definitely is like a giant monster that you would expect to breathe fire. Especially considering it's like specifically known for going on these like rampages and just wrecking entire cities. It's very hard for me to imagine that not involving just like nuking it with its breath, like Godzilla style. Same with how it uses like Hyper Beam and stuff. Basically like the same idea, is that sort of draconic breath weapon attack. Speaking of water types with weird coverage, though, I know another one because I did also use this one at one point, is Lapras gets a surprising amount of coverage moves. I think I used one on XY years ago, and I had it running like Psychic, Thunderbolt, Dream Eater. It learns a lot of weird TMs that you really would not expect. A lot of them. I think I need to get more water again. My throat is getting to me again. It's starting to dry out. How is everyone here, by the way? How are all of your nights going so far? I think I accidentally came up with a justification to make Elite Four Wilkstrom relevant again in my Fakemon game. I mean, I'm all for taking like a previously underexplored character and doing something more with them. I think that the way that characters like Annabelle or Ingo have wound up being used, I could definitely see someone like Wilkstrom potentially being like greatly expanded on if someone had like a good plan for him. Could definitely see him going from like forgettable one-off to like a fan favorite. Going fine overall, yours. I had some stuff stressing me out earlier, but I think the stream was a good way to calm down, take my mind off it a bit. I also definitely think that this is kind of the essence, the vibe that I kind of want for the streams. I think is just kind of chatting, having some creative, intelligent discussion. Like if I need to just go full just chatting and kind of like just put the games themselves aside in order to focus properly on the actual conversation, then maybe that's what I'll do. I don't know. We'll have to see how I feel going forward, I guess. Can have a steel elite four number by the term names, so the name meaning in English might be short of the blade. Is that a reference to like a particular myth or something? That kind of sounds like something that would come up in like an old story or something. I don't know. put it on my own thinking of Steel Things, and it sounded cool. Fair enough. I suppose it does sound cool, though I personally think I would want a little more meaning behind it, but I don't know, maybe there is something more you got planned for it. Might be doing France again, but better than Kalos did it. French words are so cool, actually. I want to have fun making them up. French certainly is a fun language, I suppose. What are some ideas for other prehistoric fauna that you'd want us to use for new Fossilmon? That is an interesting question. My Fossilmons that I was going with were actually pretty much all, like, variants, because, like, most of them were, maybe part of that is just based on the fact that it was, like, based around Ontario, and, like, the fossils there were stuff that was already covered, like I think Lillip and Amarith. I was going to bring back the Hoenn fossils because like horseshoe crabs and sea lilies and stuff were sort of like a thing there. Apparently, you had coral and bivalves in the fossils there. Apparently. So that made me think like Shelder Cloister and Corsula Cursula fossil variants, maybe. Then I also was going to do Sabertooth Shinx. That was one of the few that was actually someone else's idea / request. Which I definitely do like the idea of that. And then the final one was based on something called, oh god, I hope I remember and pronounce this correctly. Grapplinothia or something like that. It's basically this sort of like plant sponge kind of looking fossil, but like the way it was fossilized resulted in it looking almost like a sort of inscribed writing on like the rocks and stuff, which heavy unknown vibes there, obviously. And considering what forgive the language here, but given what a cock tease of a mystery Unknown has been for so many years at this point, they love dropping these little hints about all the weird stuff going on with Unknown, but each one only seems to raise even more questions and no real solid answers. So I thought I might as well play that game and just make this weird Unknown variant where they're like golden colored and have like Arceus level stats, but they still only learn hidden power, so they're still pretty useless despite clearly being like these godly unlocked power compared to regular unknown, they still don't know how to actually use it to do anything other than hidden power. That would be kind of a funny contrast and kind of a funny way to subtly nod at the connection I believe they sort of have with unknown being the Thousand Arms, as I say, but to not but I didn't want to outright say it, especially if the series does someday contradict it more so. I mean, Legends Arceus kind of offered a different explanation of the Thousand Arms, but Legends Arceus contradicted a lot of things and just doesn't really line up with the lore of the rest of the series. So I just kind of count it as being its own little thing that doesn't really count. If we really have to justify it in universe, let's say that the amount of space-time fuckery going on as a result of Volo, and then Ingo got dropped in, and then the player got dropped in. There's so much timey-wimey bullshit going on in that place, Hisui, during that time period, that the fabric of reality just kind of broke a little, and that's just kind of its own third timeline now. That's
Snap! Snow Snap! Hello, Parsimonio Sky! Ooh. Thank you for the follow! How's the lop and the snap? Just chatting and... Car Company Tycoon game. Whoa, did you guys just raid separately? Then Murray go through it dead. Love it so much. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You're very kind. Hello, Hades. I like that box. It's a good box. Well, thank you, Hades. 2 streams at once? Whoa, just independent of each other? Hardcore. A lop! Alright, I got 2 raids, so I'm just going to quickly look at those 2 raiders. We got lop ears first. They're lopping and bopping. Check this out. Bounce. Bounce. Oh, they're still live! Who's first?